What's going on today, guys? We're out here at the creek and we're gonna do a little technique we call floating the cider. So what is floating the cider? What we're actually gonna do is cast our leader and our cider is gonna suspend and float on the surface of the water. And you'll see it'll stop, hesitate, go forward. So how we set it up is with our tippet and then a normal cider, a piece of colored monofilament. And what we do is we use floatant, wax or grease on that leader and our cider to help that cider suspend on the surface of the water. Usually I use like loon paste, or Orvis has a high flow paste. The technique is awesome, especially in the winter time when the water's low and the fish are spooky. I can fish further distances and just cover water without spooking those fish as much. It definitely helps me to stay out of the water and gives me the ability to fish further away, but you can float the cider in any water type. How I do so is I'll make a cast, the fly will tuck in the water, and I'll let the cider float, even in fast water. And what that'll do is let that fly just naturally sink. And then maybe I'll come in contact with the fly and go through the rest of my drift. In doing so, it just makes me be able to cast further away. It lets the fly sink and get to depth quicker. So with this water, I just caught a fish out of this little pocket right here. What I did was, I started with I have a light fly on. I don't want to fish too heavy. I want the fly to get to the bottom and just kind of roll down there. So I made a cast, I stopped the rod high, let the leader turn over, and I floated the cider for a little while, letting the fly sink to depth, and I slowly lifted everything and came in contact, and that's when the fish ate. So in broken water like this, when there's a lot of varied velocities, I don't want to just cast and let everything hit the water. I might want to cast and just let the front of the cider and just float maybe the front of the cider or half the cider, because then I can get the fly to slow down. When there's a lot of different currents and speeds, if you have your entire leader laying down on all of it, it might pull. So with leaders, the heavier your leader and the heavier your cider, the better it's going to suspend your nymphs or float, because it's bigger in diameter. You can put more grease on it and it'll float higher. With that kind of leader and a heavy leader, I can't Euro nymph in tight line too far away because the sag is going to pull my leader and pull my flies to me. So when I float the cider, I just use my normal light leader because I can fish far away. But the downside is though casting. The casting is definitely a little harder with a light leader. We use the water to load the flies. We cast back and forth, letting the flies sit in the water, and the tension of the flies will help us to flick the flies in the leader back and forth. We call it the 180 cast. One thing you can do is add extra knots to your cider, and you can actually leave the tag ends of your cider, and you can put extra grease on those knots, helping it float better. And those little tags will help suspend the flies a little better, and it'll help you see the bites. I'm usually fishing between 3 and 5 feet of tippet between my fly and my cider. So when I'm fishing light water and edges, I'll fish usually just a single fly. Sometimes double 2.5s will fish well. So dry dropper or suspension device, a dedicated suspension device, or floating the cider. Floating the cider gives us the ability to fish the levels of the water better, where whenever you have a suspension device, you're kind of set at that set depth. So next time you're off to the creek, I hope this technique helps you catch some more fish. Grease your leaders, float your cider. See you soon.